Welcome to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, the podcast where insights and innovation meet. Every episode, we dive into conversations with industry leaders, experts, and change makers, bringing you the stories and ideas in the renewable energy sector that shape our world. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Wes Ashworth. Welcome to our latest episode of Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy. Today, we're honored to feature Andy Klump, a luminary in the renewable energy realm and the visionary CEO and founder behind Clean Energy Associates. With over 20 years dedicated to high-tech and renewable sectors, 16 of those revolutionizing the solar PV industry, Andy's expertise is unparalleled. His strategic leadership at Trina Solar not only facilitated around $500 million in financing, but also pioneered the supplier co-location park in Changzhou, marking a milestone in supply chain excellence. Beyond his corporate community, as a former board member of the Solar Energy Industries Association, Andy co-founded iDefine, a nonprofit committed to groundbreaking treatments for genetic-based intellectual disabilities. Andy's academic prowess is backed by an MBA from Harvard and a BA in economics from Northwestern. Join us as Andy shares his journey of innovation and impact in pushing the boundaries of clean energy forward. Andy, it's an absolute honor to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Wes. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I love starting with a good origin story. So starting out, what inspired you to enter the renewable energy sector and take us back to those first moments?
I was very fortunate to have an upbringing in St. Louis. My parents are both Midwesterners, and so grew up in rural Missouri, moved to St. Louis, and I remember as a kid, one of my inspirations was really my mother.
Okay.
Who, at the age of 5, she taught me that we could actually collect aluminum cans off the side of the road and actually bring those to the recycling center and get paid money for that. And so I always had an appreciation for helping the planet at a small age, and I thought that was an interesting combination of both helping others, eliminating waste, and also getting paid for it. And so I always had a mindfulness towards the planet and trying to do things that were helpful for sustainability. And so when I was working in China at the time, I started off my career with Dell Computer in Beijing, and kind of moved from the high tech sector to clean tech by being introduced to one of the investors at Trina Solar back in 2006. And so I thought, wow, here's a sector where I could actually work and earn money and help the planet. I said, this is amazing. I didn't even know this industry existed at this scale. So the origin story of CEA was really, while I was at Trina Solar, I experienced and learned a lot working directly in the factory in Changzhou. And my exposure happened because I knew this investor. I got introduced to Mr. Jifan Gao, who's a CEO and founder of Trina Solar, and he at the time I had 2 years of experience in China. I spoke Mandarin. He didn't speak any English, so when he interviewed me and explained, I really appreciate the fact that you have a business development and sales background, but he's like, my biggest challenge right now is the supply chain. Can you help me solve getting upstream supply? I said, wow, I really never had any experience with that, but let me go ahead and try. So the origin of CEA was really rooted in my 2 years of living and working in Changzhou, China, being based directly in the factory, walking the lines on a daily basis, and seeing what's actually happening on the ground, and realizing these 2 years experience are actually quite valuable in 2008 to give an industry perspective that very few others had. So that was really the origin of CEA.
Love it.
Rooted in my background and upbringing and desire to help the planet.
Yeah. And I love those things are there, right? Our passions and values and things like that. And you don't always fall directly into it. Oftentimes people start their career in another sector or somewhere else, and then you find your way back into that kind of passion vein of man, this feels really good and fulfilling, and helping that as well too. So that's great. I love that story. So now that you've been in it, sort of looking at your whole career and all the time you spend, and all that you've done, and all that you've accomplished. So, what's been your most significant driving force just throughout that career, and what's kept you and sustained you and kept you excited along the way?
I think one of the things that really excites me is bringing new talent into the renewable energy sector. And
Okay.
so, if I look at various highlights I've had through the years, I think it's
Yeah.
always really been the opportunity to bring folks with different industry background,
Yep.
into solar. And so, I still remember my early days at Trina, where I
Mhm.
had pretty much zero budget to hire, and I had to
Yeah.
recruit some leading folks to come
Yep.
and join and actually work in a factory town. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Changzhou was at the time a fourth tier city in China. No one knew where they even
Right.
were. So really convincing folks to join, and then later and with literally a bootstrap budget where I had to hire folks at like $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Uh, from the U.S., folks who were internationally minded, and bring
Yep.
them over. And so when I built out a team to help support a lot of the supply chain responsibilities that I did have, I used that same dynamic when I was at
Yeah.
setting up CEA in 2008, and pretty much bootstrapped the company myself, but just had to deal with the talent gap of no one knowing
Yep.
who I was, or the business that we're in. And
Yeah.
so just starting off with effectively free interns, and then low cost hires until we started to build a little bit of a momentum and expand and grow. But to me, like,
Yeah.
that's one of the highlights, is really seeing how those folks over the last 18 years have grown and,
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
expanded, and seen their careers prosper as the industry's effectively grown through what started off at 1.6 gigawatt industry in
Yep.
2006. And now we see the industry roughly 350x that this time now.
Yeah, that's no easy feat to do what you just described in a very simple way of getting those people on board. And like, I live in that space every day, and the story you tell and how you get people excited and those kind of things. I mean, that's is not an easy feat. So what are what are the I'm thinking of back to that moment and getting those folks to come on board, restricted budget, a lot of uncertainty probably, and all those kinds of things. Like, what sort of story did you tell? How did you get them to go, man, that sounds like something I want to do?
Yeah, so I pretty much always had this belief when I went to China that there was
Yep.
an opportunity to really help grow, both the industry, as well as obtain greater understanding between China and the U.S.
Yeah.
So I kind of had a vision when I first went to China. It was to say, look, I wanted to gain some solid experience. Speaking the language was obviously a challenge. I didn't study
Yeah.
Mandarin growing up. I spent the better part of 2 years to really learn and understand the language, and to
Okay.
work with it. And so when I really brought new folks to China who had never been there,
Yeah.
there was that obstacle, but also folks who didn't speak English or didn't
Uh-huh.
speak Chinese. And in some cases, there's obviously a lot of cultural barriers,
Right.
but it was also just the trying to convince them that, look, the growth in renewable energy
Yeah.
sector just had massive potential,
Hmm.
and also the belief that, look, there's a vision for where CA was going.
Yep.
And at various inflection points in CA's history, starting from that, working at home in 2008 when I set up the business from my small apartment,
Yeah.
where I just had to keep talking about the future and
Sure.
explaining, look, there's a vision that's out there. And so
Yep.
when we set our vision statement in 2015, and the company was 7 years old at the time, we
Yeah.
created a 10-year vision statement to say we would be the leading solar and energy storage technical advisor in the sector.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a bold vision back when we only had like 30
Sure.
something folks.
Right.
How here we are today with over 250 professionals in 15 countries, and we are in a position to actually achieve that vision statement here
Yeah.
9 years later, probably a year
Yeah.
early. When you compare ourselves with the other technical advisors with standalone energy storage and solar experts. We've now achieved that. It's very, very exciting to
Yeah.
have that vision and to see it come to fruition. So I always really try
Incredible.
to reflect with folks the fact that like CEA is going through this 16-year transition to what we
Mhm.
are today. But it's been the success of all of our hardworking team members coming together and really pitching in for that vision. So that's where I'm always very forward thinking
Yeah.
and look, as a planet, we need to have more solar. Solar will
Yeah.
achieve double-digit
No
percentage of
doubt.
our overall energy mix, within the next decade or two. And that is also I think a vision where
Mhm.
we're all aligned at CEA, and I think within the entire industry.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and just kind of going through it. And I feel like your approach to that is so critical, and I think something people miss a lot of when that vision's not really defined, when you don't have, and I think when you don't believe it. I work with companies a lot, and they have trouble getting talent. And it's like you have trouble believing your own vision, or you're not selling it in an exciting way, or getting these people fired up about it to go like, oh yeah, I see where you're heading and I want to head there too. I want to be with you on this journey and go with you. So that's incredible, and no doubt has driven a lot of that success. So switching gears a little bit just to your leadership approach and strategy, thinking about this industry as a whole, that is dynamic and changing, and it's fast and it's complicated, and there are so many layers of different things that come into play. How do you approach leadership and decision making in an industry as dynamic as this industry?
So it's interesting. My, I guess, philosophy on leadership has grown and evolved through the time. And
Yeah.
once again, I never had I'd say a basis in in business leadership. I
Huh?
kind of observed and learned a lot of things through simple things as becoming an Eagle Scout
Right.
as a kid.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
my parents were not involved in business. My father was a taxi driver, and my mom was a school teacher.
Yeah.
So I just kind of observed and learned little by little through them. But
Sure.
my personal experience on leadership came through partially the framework of international leadership and really being able to work across cultures.
Yeah.
Having a 19-year career in China
Hmm.
helped to provide that same framework of how do you work within with many different nationalities in a global
Yeah.
basis. So, but I've always believed in delegation. I've always
All right.
believed in hiring folks that are better than myself to
Uh-huh.
run various aspects of the business. And
Yep.
so that's where I really try to hire the best and brightest for the
Hmm.
budget that we had. And
Yep.
at the
Yeah.
early days, it was a little bit tough, but just kept
Sure.
putting the profits back in the business and trying to hire the best talent was always the right answer. And it pretty much drove my belief to say, look, if I get folks who are motivated, aligned with our long term vision,
Yeah.
they will create the right path to achieving what their objectives
Yeah.
are. And so, really trying to align what our future vision and goals were with what they wanted to accomplish personally, then it just releasing them from as much of the obstacles or challenges that we encountered. That was really the right plan. So
Yeah.
kind of through the last 16 years, we've seen and observed that at CEA.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And kind of like think if we frame it up to go, hey, here's a big decision you need to make, and maybe it's a change of direction, or maybe it's a new product, or maybe it's just something that's a pivotal moment to where you have to decide, okay, do we do this? Do we go this way? Do we not? Talk me through that, from sort of like concept to the final decision. What does that look like for you today in terms of making maybe some of those big strategic decisions?
So, whenever we launch a new product, for example, we always use this framework called NSOP, New Service Offering Process.
Okay.
And there have been many times we've launched a variety of initiatives within the company, but we always follow this basic framework, which is really an
Yeah.
iterative approach to product management. And in our world, we are a services company, so every
Hmm.
new services launch is really our new product launch. But
Yeah.
effectively, we always want to understand and get feedback from the market,
Uh-huh.
see if there is, what's the minimum viable product that we can obtain, customer feedback from, and
Sure.
then continue to iterate and reframe what is it that we're trying to achieve, and how does that align with the customer's needs. So when I started the business, it was really understanding the basic perspective that different buyers of renewable energy assets, both solar and
Uh-huh.
energy storage, they needed to obtain transparency into what was happening. And the problem
Yeah.
was in China, a lot of things were opaque.
Right.
And the cultural differences between China and the US found that a lot of manufacturers, they
Hmm.
didn't quite know or understand the expectations that some Western
Yeah.
buyers had. And so I had to sit there and sometimes literally do exact translation from
Yeah. Yeah.
English to Chinese and vice versa,
Sure.
but also create expectations. And the reality was, the Chinese mindset was, look, I want to grow and expand as quickly as we can, and
Okay. Yeah.
there's profit pools in different markets.
Yeah.
But some folks didn't respect, Western contracts the same way that some Westerners would, and some of the
Yeah.
Westerners didn't understand that some of the Chinese are facing upstream suppliers who were changing contracts on themselves.
Right.
And so really to be that translation to say, okay, how do we go through, and once a contract's been signed, sometimes the famous saying is a signed contract is the start of the negotiation. And so
Right.
one has to understand that, look, with such a niche industry and
Hmm.
so many uncertainty or uncertain variables changing, how do you work with your supplier as a partner
Yeah.
and face those obstacles? So there's been a lot of times where I've been in very tense negotiations between two parties, really
Yep.
trying to help and understand what's happening on both sides, and to say, look, going to litigation is not the right answer. That may be a
Right.
Western construct, but we have to respect and understand that both sides need to earn a certain reasonable amount of profit, and
Yeah.
try to work together as partners. So a lot of those early days, and the basis for our supply chain management business unit, was really about how do we help offer procurement advisory services that really helps both parties win and face uncertainties in the market. And in a market like solar, which was just a very small niche market of 1.6 gigawatts when I started in
Yeah.
2006, to what it is today, is that evolution required a lot of flexibility and
Sure.
understanding on both sides to make that work.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think that piece is going anywhere. I think it will require lots of that going forward too. So changing to focus a little bit on some of the things that you face, and I would love to dive into that a little bit in just terms of thinking back and even recent years. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in this field? How have you overcome them, or how has CEA overcome them? And just to hear a little bit more about the day to day, things you've run into, challenges, and how you've solved those.
So I think the one of the biggest challenges we face right now, particularly in the U.S. For buyers of renewable energy assets, is a lot of the uncertain regulatory framework. And
Yeah, sure.
once again, we've had a variety of upstream challenges related
Yep.
to traceability and
Hmm.
ESG requirements, and creating transparency. And once again, another
Yeah.
opaque market in terms of how the quartz is mined out of the ground and then processed into
Yeah,
metallurgical grade
yeah,
silicon, and
sure.
the polysilicon, then ingots, wafer cells, and modules. So that regulatory construct just emerged in the last 4 years, since
Right.
2020, and then evolving to all the challenges related to supply chains, and
Mhm.
so how does one take all the different supply chain challenges, which are constantly changing with the regulatory
Yeah.
changes that are happening, dealing with the effects of the movement of products really around the world,
Right.
is one of the big challenges. But once
Yeah.
again, it's also an opportunity, and that's where
Yeah.
recently, with the passage of the IRA in the United States, a
Mhm.
lot of manufacturers are now moving their manufacturing base to the United States.
Yeah.
And so really helping to understand, how does one understand the origin of products, from where they start being mined out of the ground until where
Sure.
they are in the final assembly process into solar modules. That's one of the biggest, I'd say, challenges the industry has, is that developers require a lot of lead time understanding of what the product roadmaps are, how the
Right.
efficiency curve is going to be deployed over time. But they're in this long, sometimes 4, 6, sometimes 8 year project life cycle, and one has to
Yeah.
plan several years in advance. But then you have all these regulatory changes, which you're
Sure.
not sure where that product is going to originate. So it
Yeah.
used to be in China, and now
Yeah.
shifting to Southeast Asia, and now all of a sudden becoming a domestic supply chain, or in many cases having a combination of all three of those different regions to get the
Oh,
final project in place. Those are some of the frameworks that are changing, and that the CA team is really helping our
yeah.
partners understand and deploy. So that's been one of the challenges of the industry the last
Yeah. Yeah.
decade, really, since the first tariffs first went into effect back in 2014 to
Right.
15.
Yeah, and goes back to that flexibility you mentioned earlier. I see a lot of that necessity in what you just described, and kind of going, okay, we had this kind of plan. This is where we thought it was going to go, but then regulatory things change or different things change, and you got to adjust and be flexible on the fly. It makes me think about. I'm curious, and you've built teams. Obviously, you've scaled quite a bit, and you talked about hiring early on versus hiring growth now. What are the key things that you're looking for? When you think about somebody that's going to succeed in this industry, in your organization, dealing with some of those challenges that you just went through and mentioned, what are the key traits or things that you look for to go, okay, this person's going to really help us and add value and help things go forward?
So one of the key themes, I think, of CA success has been the team and the alignment with our culture.
Yeah.
And as I kind of referenced the early stage of CA, I set up the company in the middle of a financial crisis in
Yep.
2008,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of just throwing spaghetti on the wall and try to see what stuck.
Right.
But it was a lot of reaction to the market and to try to work with clients on helping us solve problems.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really until we had roughly a 30-person team in
Okay.
2015 that we really shaped our core culture, and really worked with an executive coach to align what are the core values that really drive the CA team members to do what
Yeah.
we have to do to succeed. And so gaining clarity on CA's
Yep.
core culture. We identified 8 core values. We are
Okay.
family, have fun, unending
Yep.
curiosity, be humble, do the right thing, results matter, own it, and perform above and beyond.
Yeah.
And so when I really start from that origin story, it wasn't just, it wasn't my own personal values. It was
Right.
us,
Right.
roughly 16, or roughly all folks kind of getting together in a conference
Yeah.
room from a few different countries. It was that core group of 16
Yeah.
that came together over the course of a 2-day session in person, facilitated by our executive coach, Mike Myro, that we
Yeah.
really identified what are our core values and
Yeah.
how do we align around a core purpose. So
Yeah.
CA's core purpose is, we believe that by helping our clients and stakeholders deploy solar and storage solutions worldwide, we are creating a better future. And once we had that cultural framework aligned, then we went through a lot of transition. We found out that,
Yeah.
look, some folks weren't aligned with necessarily doing the right thing, or
Yeah.
performing above and beyond. And so we had to go through and reframe who are our leaders that were going to establish
Sure.
the next growth. And so there was this kind of 2-year period of transition where we were experiencing some, a flatness at the organizational level. But once we had a
Mhm.
team that was fully aligned around our core culture,
Yeah.
then we went through very high paced growth, and it was
Mhm.
exciting to see the platform then expand to 50, then to
Yeah.
75, to
Yeah.
100 plus folks. And at that point, going from 100 to 250
Yep.
became a much easier transition point. Beyond that period through 2024, where we are today.
I love it. I've heard so many successful stories of scale. They almost always have that thread of really, we really defined our values, we really defined our vision and our mission and those kind of things. And it wasn't just like a poster on the wall, right? It's something we really live by, and it's who we are. And I think that's important too. Like, it's got to be who you are, not even who you strive to be. But if you think about your core group and your core people, as you kind of looked at that 16 or whatever that was, it's kind of like, these are the threads that this is true to who we are. This is genuine, and this is us. And then you start building upon that. That's incredible. That's how you do it. So, um, So
Absolutely, and really having that alignment is crucial. But it starts really in the early stage recruiting
yeah,
process, and so
yeah,
we
no
really
doubt.
screen for culture in terms of people that want to come to CA. And I
Yep.
will definitely say it's very different from the early days of CA, where we had a very hardworking, innate alignment among that early group of 3, 5, 10 folks.
Yeah.
But as we scaled to 50 and 100, it
Yeah.
was really like bringing that cultural down from the executive level to
Yeah.
all new team members wherever they are, and also bring in outside industry veterans to join the
Hmm.
CA team. One really has to screen very carefully for culture. So that
Yeah.
cultural fit was a common theme, and that's what's allowed us to be successful and still allows us to grow and scale the business today.
I love it. Yeah, I'd say that often. It's kind of like matching skill sets is the easy part, but really what's important is matching the fit, matching the culture, matching like, does this person just fit into this organization and where they're headed? That's the key component. So, thinking about your team as well and your company, this industry being very innovative, and it has to be that way. I think because everything is evolving quickly and regulatory, everything's changing quickly. You have to foster this culture of innovation within the team and organization. Not an easy thing to do. How do you do that? How do you foster a culture of innovation within your organization?
So once again, as I talked about our origin story, it was a bit of chaos when we first set up the business, but it was once we had a that session in 2015, and I had an executive coach who really helped me understand my own weaknesses
Yeah,
and
yeah,
mistakes on the leadership side. I was able to really kind of work through that process and identify how do you continue to reinforce culture. So it's not
yeah,
just about putting words down on paper, showing a PowerPoint with our core values is about how do we
right.
live those on a day in, day out basis.
Yep.
So I read a lot of books, I studied a lot of different frameworks and thoughts on leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the key books I often reference to our team is the book Scaling Up by Vern
Uh
Harnish.
huh.
And it's based on the Rockefeller habits that
Yeah.
were created by John D. Rockefeller. And he had about 40 different habits that were in all of his organizations and exercise very clearly.
Sure.
And it really starts with that alignment of culture. And then
Hmm.
how do you live that and build out a pattern of communication and strategy for your business around that. And so part of it is just the communication rhythms that we have as an
Yeah.
organization. So in the last 9 years, we've aligned around there. Everyone in the company has a daily huddle that is aligned with
Sure.
that with aligned with what our global objectives are, and setting those objectives 10 years out, 5 years
Yeah.
out, 3 years out, and then our annual operating plan. We then reinforce that in both a daily huddle with our team members, but then there's weekly workshops and monthly all hands meetings
Yeah.
that really reinforce from the very top
Hmm.
to the bottom of the organization, and then once again being able to float uh, key items from the bottom on up. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where our executives talk with team members on a weekly basis, get feedback from various parts of the company. We get
Yep.
client feedback and really try to bring each of these communication channels to bear. That's a huge part of that framework. So I give
Yeah.
a lot of credit to Vern Harnish for working with thousands of startups, building
Mm.
and suggesting this type of framework. But we started off that first year with literally 1 out of 40. And I'm very
Wow.
proud today that we're at 37 out of those 40
Yeah.
habits.
That's incredible.
Very tough to get to all 40, but
Sure.
it's something that we would continue to reinforce and measure on an annual basis. So there's a
Yep.
lot of different, I'd say, ways to create alignment. Another one is our culture book. And so
Uh-huh. Okay.
back in 2014, I read the book Delivering Happiness by
Yeah.
Tony Chia. I saw the Zappos headquarters in Las Vegas
Sure.
during the solar show. And I was just amazed to go on that tour and see the core values alive and understand their culture. And
Yeah.
by attending that tour, I obtained one of their culture books. And I
Okay.
said to myself, this is what I want for CA. And it took us
Love
about
it.
6 years till we really built
Yeah, I was going to ask you the time.
in 2020. But now it's been an annual tradition. So the last 3 years, we've actually launched our culture book and put it on our website. So anyone can go on to
That's cool.
CEA3.com and download our culture book.
Yeah,
and they see that 115 plus page document that has so many stories of hundreds of our team members
that's incredible.
living our
Yeah.
culture on a day in, day out basis. And so to me, that's one of the exciting things I get to work on. I share a lot of things on a personal basis. This
Hmm.
past couple of years, both my mother and father passed away, and I actually shared their
Yeah,
eulogy in the appendix of the culture book. But we
sure.
celebrate the exciting things that all of our team members are
Yeah.
doing and living on a day in, day out basis. So that's really the basis for how we live our culture on a day in, day out basis. So there's it's one of those things they have to reinforce in 1,000 different ways, and something like the culture book really demonstrates CA's culture and action. And that's to me, that's a lot of fun to share that with everyone and really align around our culture and see it as a living and breathing document that changes and improves every year.
That's incredible. You're setting the standard there for sure, and I think plenty of people who listen to this are going and getting those two books right now and subscribing to that as well. So that's awesome. Switching gears a little bit. So, what are some of the things thinking about just renewable energy and emerging trends? Like, what are you most excited about, and why?
So I think in the last 10 years since we launched our energy storage practice,
Uh-huh.
I've seen and observed the industry grow
Yep.
and change dynamically. I think my first visit to an energy storage factory was back in 2011,
Okay.
where I saw a small factory outside of Beijing,
Yep.
and a very early stage, startup that went out of business. But I said, "Wow, this is a fascinating industry, and
Hmm.
would love to see the marrying of both energy storage and mainstream renewables come together."
Absolutely.
And now we see 10 years later everything coming to fruition. We've seen how uh, the the manufacturing sector has really grown and evolved
Yeah.
to have these large behemoths, leading companies like CATL and BYD
Yep.
establish that core business and see it grow and scale through the years.
Hmm.
And the attach rate of a lot of both solar and wind projects now having a high amount of battery storage
Yeah.
solutions being attached to those projects, so it meets some of the needs of the grid. That's where we see tremendous growth,
Yeah.
particularly in markets like the U.S., but also in Europe. But
Sure.
globally, there's higher demand for both energy storage and solar being paired together. So
Yeah.
we have a very strong team led by Jeff Burkett,
Okay.
who was one of the leaders of NextEra's energy storage practice,
Okay. Yeah.
where he grew and scaled a $7 million business to $1.9 billion. So he's gained a lot of
Wow.
insights through his 9 years in NextEra, and those are being shared with a lot of insights are shared now with a lot of our clients in the industry who are
Yep.
deploying energy storage together with solar. So
Hmm.
I'm very, very bullish for our energy storage practice. Seeing the growth that
Yeah.
managed under Jeff's leadership is certainly very exciting. But I know that this is meeting the needs of renewable energy buyers around the world, and so it's great to be a part of seeing those projects being deployed
Yeah.
in 80 plus countries, and that's where our track record leads us to be a global player.
Yep.
But seeing energy storage and solar coming together.
I love it. Yeah, it's kind of like now it's unavoidable, right? Everything sort of like connects back to storage at the end of the day. So it's such a huge important thing. What are some of the things you're seeing as far as like trends or kind of like current market state in terms of storage and some of the things you're seeing from your perspective?
So on the energy storage side is absolutely a much higher attach rate to projects than we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
But there's a desire for both transparency of supply chain as well
Yep.
as repeatability of product deployments. So I think one of the key trends is really how does one eliminate the risk around thermal events, and
Uh
so
huh.
creating greater transparency into the supply chain, where the components
Yeah.
are coming from, and also where the safety measures are in place.
Right.
Unfortunately, we've been at many deployments of projects and seen the challenges around thermal events. And so, once
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
keeping the
Sure.
industry safe and making sure that everyone's following the protocols that are deployed is absolutely crucial. Seeing how the supply chains have evolved and shifted closer to the U.S. Means that our teams have grown and evolved, in the U.S.
Sure.
But making sure that all these systems are kind of passing the different standards in place, and certainly looking at safety and efficiency as key themes. those are some of the things that we see grow and evolve. But once again, also the cost trends come down dramatically
Hmm.
on the solar side. I still remember the days when there was a massive shortage of upstream raw component of polysilicon. We saw
Yeah,
product
sure.
being sold for $375 a kilogram, and
Uh,
now seeing that same product yeah, at a cost basis dropping below $10 per kg.
yeah.
Now, that same that cost reduction has resulted in the solar modules being a
Yep.
fraction. Literally, I've seen a 95% reduction in terms of their selling price to the market.
Hmm.
Allows the market to grow. And so one of the themes of in picking up on the regulatory trends is the U.S. doesn't have access to the lowest cost upstream supply due to tariffs.
Right.
And so once
Sure.
again, working within the regulatory frameworks and making sure there's a transparent supply chain that's delivered that allows low cost renewable energy to meet the needs of the market. That's one of the things that we always try to follow is what is happening on the supply chain side. How does one
Yeah.
react to different cost trends and try
Sure.
to work with the regulatory frameworks to make that successful has kept us quite busy.
I can imagine so. Going back to that safety component with storage, what do you think, I guess, needs to happen? Is it a matter of just time? We just need more time to perfect it and get the things right, and that's just normal. Like I think you see that with any emerging technology usually. Is it these companies need better engineering support? Is it a mix of both? Like what is it in terms of like a solve? I guess from what you're able to see, like what do you see needs to happen?
So I think it's a combination of both technology development as well as transparency around the supply chain.
Yeah,
And so we accomplish a lot by working directly with the manufacturers and understanding what their technology
sure.
roadmaps are, and then translating that to our clients. We've seen a big shift towards safer chemistries like
Yeah,
LFP versus NMC,
sure.
but
Yep.
a lot of standards have grown and evolved. And in terms of new product innovation that meets the needs of the market, many upstream suppliers kind of meet the specifications that clients have, but really understanding what the use case is and
Hmm.
really outlining how degradation will likely evolve over time, and
Right.
giving folks insights into what are the technology and product innovations that really drive towards safety are
Yep.
absolutely very very crucial. So
Yeah.
understanding how one's augmentation strategy works in line with the contracts is
Yep.
really quite crucial. So once again, our teams are involved in very early stage product roadmap exercises, but helping
Right.
clients know and understand where the products are going and understand the use cases is
Yeah.
one of the areas where we have a strong edge, and it allows our clients to deploy solutions that are both safe and environmentally friendly. So our teams are heavily involved in all those exercises.
Yeah, no, great. In kind of going back to just the industry and outlook and thinking about the future and those kind of things. So thinking about the next decade, right? Like what are some of the things that you see? What do you predict?
Well, I think it's very clear we're seeing certain points where some markets have deployed a high amount of solar, where all of a sudden solar during the daytime becomes one of the uh, you know, peak providers of energy, and you
Yeah.
see how do different countries deploy such a large amount of solar and wind when they're producing at peak times of the day, and that's where the understanding like how will the grid evolve to grow and meet those needs. We see that in key markets like Germany, who've deployed such large amounts of renewables,
Sure.
and where those deployments achieve greater than 50% production of the market. I think that one of the key themes is just how does the grid evolve in different countries and really kind of meet the need for resiliency. And so
Yeah.
that's where solar historically has not been a part of baseload, and that's where solar stored with energy storage solutions
Right.
allows folks to take that the peak production times and then offset that to where needs are in the market
Hmm.
at various times in these the evening, for example, when the sun isn't at its peak.
Yeah.
Once again, marrying solar and storage together. So my overall theme is like over the next decade, how does that resiliency of the grid evolve, and how do you marry energy storage with solar
Yep.
That's a big question. Like, how can we move towards that double-digit percentage overall energy needs of the market?
Sure.
That's an exciting trend to see. But
Yeah.
those deployments will absolutely be greater than 10, 20, 30% of the overall
Right.
grid, a combination of both solar and energy storage.
Yeah, awesome. Any other key changes you think need to happen just to see the renewable energy sector becoming more predominant, becoming more accepted, becoming just a normal part of like we're here, we've arrived, like any other big changes you feel like that need to happen?
I think one of the key points is really ensuring that different governments and different countries adapt by eliminating a lot of the regulatory hurdles.
Right.
Once
Yeah.
again, utilities need to, they've had a slow reluctance to adopt, some of the renewable energy deployments
Right.
and a variety of ways, but they have embraced the technology trend, and so as the larger utilities who are the end owners of the various grids around the world are accepting that. It's just like, how do you eliminate the barriers that the different either regulatory agencies or utilities have in deploying
Yeah.
renewables is obviously one of the key themes. And
Sure.
so that's where the role of organizations like ACP and CEA in the United States play an important role of really trying to translate different industry actors
Yeah. Yeah.
to work with the utilities to know and understand how to deploy renewables at scale is really important. So really trying to eliminate barriers that are put in place by either regulatory
Yeah.
frameworks or those organizations is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of sticking with predictions, if you were to predict one major change, maybe something unexpected or not maybe not common knowledge out there in renewable energy, so one major change in the renewable energy sector, what would it be?
So I'd say one of the key themes is absolutely about how low cost the organization or the supply chain can be,
Yeah.
and I think there are absolutely going to be points where we're running to an asymptotic curve
Uh-huh.
where solar and energy storage have kind of reached a tipping point where it's based on what what the actual market can bear. So I do see that once again going closer and closer to the 2-3 cents per kilowatt hour
Yeah.
threshold, but we have to get past some of the tariffs and regulatory hurdles that are in place. So we can't solar can't achieve that in today's market, but it is obviously clear if we get a transparent supply chain produced in the United States that is really co-located to where the energy
Yeah.
demands are, then I think we can eliminate some of the bottlenecks and barriers of transportation
Yep.
throughout a global supply chain. But that is still going to be a hurdle and something it's hard because of Sino-U.S. relations and the next handful of years. But I think in the next decade, as we really see the solar market emerging, it's a
Yeah.
lot like the Japanese automotive market
Sure.
transitioned in in the 1980s, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
we start to see manufacturers going global and being in a lot of different markets. And I think a lot of folks just thought, okay, this is going to be a China-based supply chain.
Right.
Yes, that is the basis for 90+% of a lot of the upstream capacity. But
Hmm.
as we get deployment of solar, I still think that manufacturing in a highly automated fashion at the downstream level will actually reduce a lot of the cost related to transportation and allow the market to become more efficient. So I do think that a co-located manufacturing base around the world is where the market will eventually go,
Yep.
and that will kind of marry both upstream low cost with downstream distance to the end market. So
Yeah.
my overall theme is that decoupling from the manufacturing base in China will still continue to happen for certain
Sure.
parts of the value chain, and eventually we'll see the supply chains being built out in different parts of the world.
Yeah, love it. Um, in kind of getting closer to, wrapping up the interview, and I want to get to a couple things that I have on my mind left. And one of those is just thinking about reflecting on your whole career and your journey and what you've done. What are you most proud of and why?
I would say I'm extremely proud of the success that our team has had in really, working together around aligned vision and culture.
Yeah.
To me, like the basis of CA was really some of the things that I saw and experienced in the upstream supply chain, but really aligning around a common goal and vision.
Yep.
To me, I'm extremely proud to see the alignment and the engagement that our team has had
Sure.
around what our client needs are. So once again, I have to harp back on that key theme of culture. It's just once
Yeah.
again living a culture that lives far beyond that first team of 16 who aligned around our core values, and just seeing the organization grow and scale to now 250 folks globally.
Yep.
To me, I'm most proud of really seeing our team live our culture on a day in, day out basis, but
Hmm.
know that we're going to continue to grow and uh, you know double, triple, quadruple in the next decade. And part of one of the key changes of the company and that happened a couple of years ago was when I sold the business to Intertech.
Okay.
Intertech is a testing, inspection, and certification business with 44,000 folks globally,
Yeah.
and they wanted to grow in the renewable energy sector. And so
Sure.
CA is now a standalone, P&L, business unit within their broader industry services organization. And
Yeah.
so it's exciting to now have a platform where they have teams in over 100 plus countries. We married our team in 15 plus countries into that organizational framework. So
Yeah.
I'm extremely proud that our organizations are working closely together, and
Sure.
CA can now grow and expand and help our clients deploy solar and storage worldwide. And so we measure
Love
how
it.
many different countries we've been active in. We've had clients or client projects in over 80 countries,
Yep.
but that still is roughly 41% of the globe. And so we know that once again, eventually our teams will achieve over 100 and 150, 200 plus countries around the world. And so helping that deployment, I think solar is one of those technologies that can be
Yeah.
deployed in every country in the planet. So the alignment of our team with that overall arching, long-term core purpose, that's what really excites me and makes me very proud.
I love it. Love it. Kind of concluding. So, what? Any parting, just wisdom, thoughts, insights? Sort of an open question. Anything that you want to share with the audience, with the industry? Any other, advice, wisdom, insight? Anything else you want to
Well,
put
to
in here?
the early theme that I mentioned about my personal career, bringing a lot of folks outside the renewable energy business into the
Yep.
sector, one of the themes I always talk about with folks is like, do your homework, understand what
Yeah. Yeah.
organization you want to work for, but align with the cultural fabric of that organization, and really
Absolutely.
study and understand now just what the organizational core values are, but how they're lived on a day in, day
Right.
out basis. So I always direct folks to podcasts like this to understand my background, but more importantly the company's cultural fabric. And so
Definitely.
I see when folks come prepared, they understand our culture, they're
Yeah.
excited and engaged by what
Yeah.
they see and read in our culture book. And so I always advise, look, culture starts at the top, so you have to look at the top of those organizations and say,
Yeah.
how is a culture lived and breathed and practiced on a day in, day out basis? So
Yep.
my advice to individuals who are either new to the solar industry or new to their careers is just always study that the cultural fabric of those organizations and see the alignment with your personal goals and objectives, and
Yeah.
go where that alignment is strongest, because you're going to succeed in those organizations that are aligned from a culture perspective. So going through and doing that homework and studying that at the get-go is absolutely a key part of long-term success.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Kind of on that talent discussion, and maybe final question. I know you've had to pull talent from other industries and things like that and sort of building it out. What are some of those industries that you typically go to most commonly?
I would say just in general, we're looking for folks that know and understand the premise of high growth businesses. So it
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily have to be folks coming from the energy background.
sure. Okay.
We've pulled a lot of folks who've had background in manufacturing. Sometimes that's
Yep.
been in other sectors like semiconductors, but it also comes from folks with a high tech background. So we've had
Yeah.
a strong team with IT background and orientation. We built a lot of processes around automation and trying to deploy new technologies. Once again, the impact of AI in our business is still just at the early stages. So we
Yeah.
look for folks who really gravitate towards high growth industries and then
Right.
apply principles from those industries into our sector. So if I looked at the origin of where our industries come in the last
Mhm.
19 years and seen the 350x kind of growth of the supply chain, I want folks who know and understand how to react and work with high growth markets.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily matter as much where the industry is. It's more about
Sure.
how do they react to high growth,
Yep.
and individuals that are attracted to high growth sectors
Uh-huh.
you can really thrive in our industry because there is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of change that's
Absolutely.
always
Yeah.
so being able to work in that constant change of frameworks is extremely important.
Yeah, and that's where the fit comes in, right? Like there are people that are hardwired to they love that and they find that exciting and fulfilling, and it gets them out of bed in the morning like ready to go. And then there are ones that are kind of like a little less growth, a little less uncertainty, a little more rigid. That's good, and we need those people too. But I think it is important to find that fit as you've outlined. So that's incredible advice. But thank you so much, Andy, for your time, your ability to just share with us and share your wisdom and insights. And it's an honor again to have you on. And I'm sure the listeners will get a lot out of this interview as well too. So all those out there, thank you so much for listening. Next episode will be on the way soon, and remind you to just listen, subscribe, rate, review, share, help get the word out and spread this around. And until next time, we are concluding.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Wes. And I look forward to engaging with all those listeners out there. So feel free to have anyone reach out to me on LinkedIn or visit our website to understand more about CEA.